Hi, everyone. My name is Suzanne Hume, and I'm the Educational Director and founder of CleanEarthForKids.org, a nonprofit. I'm here today with our amazing youth board and interns and a very special guest, Dr. Cynthia Way from Georgetown. And we're really excited to hear all that she has to say about bees and bee colonies and more. I would first like to introduce Leanna.
Hi everyone, I'm Lena Cortez and I'm the Youth Board lead for Team 1, which is Climate Action, Sustainability, and Renewable Energy. If you'd like to help protect the planet and help your school district, city, country, business, or state reduce your carbon footprint, Team 1 may be for you. We work on climate action plans, renewable energy, and sustainability. Our website has examples of climate action plans and resolutions for cities and school districts. People can submit climate action contests, ideas, and actions. Students, if you're watching this, you can earn community service by writing 2 pages of notes and a short summary of what you have learned. More information can be found on our website at cleanforkids.org. I would like to now introduce Catherine.
And Catherine will be with us in just a moment because Catherine is out building trails and making those a great difference doing the important things that she does. So Leanna, could you just go ahead and talk a little bit about what it is that Team 2 does and what Catherine does? Thank you.
Yes, of course. So Team 2 works with trees and protecting wildlife and forests. So one of the things that they do, or a contest going on within Team 2 is called the Protect What You Love contest. So if you like art, music, writing, or making video clips, planting trees, gardens, or just protecting wildlife and public lands, Team 2 would also be right for you. And you can enter the Protect What You Love contest, which shows that you can use by, like I said, for making art, music, or whatever, and showing what you want to protect and what you love. And that's basically about what Team 2 works on, and they got a lot of cool projects going on, a lot of artistic themed projects, so it's great to hear what they're doing. And I guess we'll move on to Team 3, which is Judith. So Judith, would you like to go?
Yes, thank you. Hello, my name is Judith, a youth board artist and with Team 3. Okay. We focus mainly on clean air because kids breathe here. As Leanna said, you can enter our contest at cleanearthforkids.org, where you can help protect wildlife, public lands, clean air, clean water, and make a difference. If you go to our contest page at cleanearthforkids.org, you'll see a variety of contests like art, music, writing, poetry, dance, STEM projects, infographics, presentations, and many more. We have many K-12 contests and challenges for everyone to take part in. So if you like to write poetry, we have a contest just for you. You can write poems about air, water, land, health, animals, and our forests. We also have a contest called These Are the Hands, created by Chelsea. This contest recognizes and honors people who are working to make life better for others. You can draw and decorate a picture of a hand with symbols, words, and pictures of how this person has made a difference. You can also write about a person who honors social and racial justice. Some champions are Martin Luther King Jr. or John Lewis, or you can also do environmental justice heroes that have protected air, water, and public lands. Tonight, we will honor our board member, Jay Kloppenstein. I would now like to introduce Jonah.
Hi everyone, my name is Jonah. I work with Team 4, working to protect clean water from chemicals and pesticides. Yeah. I'd like to introduce Jillian now.
Hi everyone, my name is Jillian and I work with both Team 5 and Team 6. We must work together to protect children's health, workers, and really all of our community from toxic chemicals and pesticides. That's Team 5. And there are some important steps that you can take to help do this. If you go to our website, cleanearthforkids.org, you can sign petitions, sign letters, send emails, participate in art challenges, and watch our helpful educational video clips that can help make a difference. And now I'd like to introduce Jonah.
All right, I'm back. So I have the honor of introducing our guest today, who is one of my former professors at Georgetown. Her name is Dr. Cynthia Way, and being in her class during the fall of my freshman year really was one of the major factors in me pursuing environmental advocacy in the future and with Clean Earth for Kids. So I'm super grateful to have her today. And I'm super excited to get the opportunity to learn from her. So how's it going, Dr. Way? Tonight we're going to be asking her to share some information and then ask her if she'd like to build on or expand the information that we're going to present right now, just some background knowledge before we get into what she has to say. So before we get started, me and Judith are going to review a couple key terms about pollinators.
Okay, so since today's panel discussion, the topic is pollinators, can you please tell us what a pollinator is?
Yeah, thanks, Judith. Pollinator is an animal that carries pollen, which is a powder in the stems of flowers, or not the stems, but the reproductive organs of flowers that sticks to animals and allows it to spread from plant to plant, and this is key for plant reproduction. And examples of pollinators include bees, butterflies, bats, small rodents even. So, yeah.
Can you please tell us more about pollen, please?
Yeah, so I don't know if you guys have ever been picking flowers or anything, but you may have noticed when you touch the middle of a flower, you might get some yellow dust on your hands. So that's pollen. And it's a little sticky powder, like I said, that sticks on the legs and fur of creatures that go visit these flowers for food. And when they go visit another flower, it spreads that pollen to the other plant. And this is how plants reproduce.
Why is pollination important?
So yeah, like I mentioned, pollination allows many species of plants to reproduce. And without it, these plants would essentially die off. And this is a huge problem for us because we depend on these plants for countless things. We depend on pollination for food. Over 75% of the top global food crops rely on pollination, especially fruits and vegetables, grains, and nuts. 1 out of every 3 bites of food would not exist without pollinators helping those plants to grow. And pollinators are also essential to our economic welfare. They add $217 billion to the global economy every year. And in the US, honeybees alone add anywhere from 1.2 to $5.4 billion. So they're huge in terms of our economic survival and health as a country. And also, pollination is essential for the production of many medicines that depend on plants for their production.
Oh, wow. So without pollination, it'd be extremely difficult for us to survive. Well,
Exactly.
So talking more about pollination, can you please tell us how are flowers, plants, and some trees pollinated?
Of course. So when, say, a bee visits a flower and they're getting in there to get that nectar or the pollen that they collect and bring back to the hive, that pollen is a sticky powder that sticks to the fur on their legs. And so when that pollinator flies or walks, pollen is spread all over the ground and inside those flowers when they visit another flower. And that allows the plants to reproduce.
Speaking of a pollinator, can you please tell us about butterflies?
For sure. There are around 15,000 to 20,000 species of butterfly, making them one of the key pollinators in the world. And, other than that, they're just incredibly beautiful creatures. And they feed off the nectar in flowers, which makes them great pollinators because they're able to pick up that pollen because they need to get so deep in the flower to get that nectar. And then they spread that pollen to other plants.
Thank you so much for telling us about pollination. So now, Jillian, can you please tell us about moths?
Absolutely. Thank you, Judith. So moths are insects that are within the same family as butterflies. You can see from these pictures, they kind of look similar, except they outnumber butterflies 9 to 1. There are around 160,000 different species globally and around 11,000 species here in the United States. You can usually tell the difference based off the shape of their antenna. Butterflies have this club-shaped antenna to where moths have what looks like feathers. However, moths are great pollinators just like butterflies. They too drink the nectar, which results in them picking up pollen, and then that's spread to other plants.
Wow. Thank you, Jillian. Can you please tell us about the endangered moths and butterflies?
Absolutely. So there are currently around 30 endangered species of moth and butterflies. Some of these butterflies include the El Segundo blue butterfly, the swallowtail butterfly, and of course the iconic monarch butterfly, which I believe Jay is known for working for. Some of the moths include the Blackburn's phoenix moth and the Kern primrose phoenix moth. Many of these butterflies and moth species are facing extinction. This means these butterflies and moths will be gone unless we can make changes to protect their habitats or where they live. Butterflies and moths require land with a lot of food and shelter to assist them throughout their life cycle. And the species that travel or migrate require a safe place to stay over their winter seasons. Pesticides are also harming our butterfly, moth, bee, and really all of our pollinator populations. Now, you can sign up to protect what you love, to stop toxic pesticides at schools, on city and county lands, or you can draw pictures and do art or STEM projects to bring awareness. Your work does make a difference. Some other cool programs we have are writing songs and letters and making video clips. You can make a change because knowledge is power, and we need to learn all we can.
Thank you, Jillian. We should do all we can to protect these important pollinators. So can you please tell us about bats?
Absolutely. So bats are the only mammals that can fly for long periods of time, and there are over 1,000 different species of bats. All bats are nocturnal or active at night, and many choose to live in caves. Most species of bats eat insects, or they eat fruits and vegetables, or drink the nectar of flowers. Now, this is important because it also makes them great pollinators. They pick up pollen when they grasp fruit from a plant, or they drink nectar from flowers, and then, of course, pass it on to other plants.
Can you tell us about birds too?
100%. Birds are vertebrates, or animals with a backbone that have very definable characteristics. So some of those include feathers, a tough beak, and the fact that they lay eggs that have a hard shell. You may come in contact with birds every day, but the pictures on the slide are of some of my favorite birds, hummingbirds. These and most other birds serve as important pollinators because, like I said, they drink nectar from flowers or they eat seeds.
Thank you so much for telling us all of this. So Leanna, can you please tell us about small rodents that carry pollen?
Yes, absolutely, Judith. So bees are tend to be known as the largest pollinators essential to the survival of many plant species. But lizards, mice, bats, and other vertebrates are also act as important pollinators as well. A new study found that fruit and seed production drops an average 63% when vertebrates, not insects, are kept away from plants. This means that protecting vertebrae is also very important. For example, in South Africa, there's a shrew called the Cape elephant sengi. They use their long noses and tongues to get nectar out of pagoda lily plants. They have been known to enjoy nectar more than any other food, even though they are primarily insectivorous. So, yeah. Jonah, can you please tell us more about bees?
And
Yeah.
actually, if to say real quick, you guys, this information is so incredibly important. Thank you so much. We must protect these pollinators. Catherine, who's just come back from building trails and doing the walking the talk out here, is now joined us.
Hey everyone.
So, hi, Catherine. So
sorry, I don't know, the link wasn't working. Good job,
That-
Leanne. That was awesome. You guys have been doing so great.
Yes. So, Catherine, I just would like to ask you before Jonah talks a little bit about bees and then interviews Dr. Way, I would just like to ask you about which one is your favorite pollinator? I know there were many shared, but which pollinator is your favorite?
That's a good question. My favorite pollinator is the one that dwells in South Africa called the Cape elephant sengi. They are awesome and they're really cute.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. And here's a picture of it. Yes, this is such a different looking mammal. I've never seen this before. Every time I learn something new. So thank you guys for bringing all this important information and doing all this great research. So thank you so much, and thank you for being here, all of you. So yes. And also thank you to our new interns who are listening. So we're really excited about our new interns. And so Connor is one of our interns who just messaged the panelists, said, "Isn't this such a cute animal?" or something like that. And so we're so excited. We do have on our website applications that people can fill out, whether they'd like to be an intern or apply for our youth board or volunteer positions, or help us out as just volunteers, adult volunteers. So yes, thank you so much for being here, everybody. And so yes, so Jonah, can you tell us about bees?
Yes, so bees are going to be such a big topic for what we're going to talk about tonight, especially as I'm talking with Dr. Way. And as cute as that shrew is, it just doesn't compare in terms of the success of pollinators compared to honeybees. Honeybees there's even compared to other bees, of which there are 20,000 different types, honeybees are just the most successful because of the adaptations that they've had to ensure that they're spreading pollen at just an incredible rate. They're also highly intelligent, and they're foraging generalists, which means that they'll pollinate a lot of different plants and not be picky as to which plants they collect nectar and pollen from. So they also have a tool that helps them communicate with other bees where a particularly good bunch of flower is, and it's a waggle dance where when they're out foraging, they notice a really good bunch of flowers, they'll come back to the hive and use this crazy dance to show the other bees with their body where they can go fly out of the hive and find those flowers, even miles and miles away. It's just an incredible adaptation that they've used to just become super successful in locating flowers. So with that, I'd like to introduce Dr. Way. Thanks so much for being with Clean Air for Kids tonight. And could you please, just introduce yourself and tell us what you do with Georgetown, how you got started working with bees, things like that. Thanks so much.
Sure. Thanks for the introduction, Jonah. So I'm a associate professor of teaching in the School of Foreign Service, and I teach several classes, one of which Jonah took, looking at the interface of humans and nature. But by training, I am a biologist, and I did my PhD studying learning and behavior in honeybees. I've also studied birds, and so I have, always had a, keen interest in pollinators just from my research. And so when I came to Georgetown, I met up with another professor who is a beekeeper, and we started talking about ways we could collaborate to just bring more education about pollinators to campus. And with his leadership and a few other faculty members, along with the student Hoya Hive group. So there is a campus beekeeping group led by another former student of mine, but we put together a proposal for the bee campus with Xerces Society, which I can talk about later, but that's how we got into the bee campus. So I don't know if you want to wait to talk about that, but I'll pause there.
Thanks so much. Yeah, I wanted to get a little bit into the threats facing bees today. We've talked a little bit in our previous panel discussions about the pollinator crisis as these insect species are in decline, but I wanted to talk to you about what you perceive as some threats facing honeybees specifically.
Sure. There are a lot of threats, unfortunately, and there's not, one thing that is the problem. So there are a lot of things which, yes, you have listed here quite well. The big one is habitat loss. When you're talking about pollinators more broadly, of course, pesticides play a role. For honeybees, there's even things like the diversity of the diet that they have access to. So when you have honeybees that are, worker bees in an almond orchard in California, they are feeding on one type of flower and one type of pollen. And it turns out that that is actually less healthy for them than if they were foraging in a wild meadow of lots of different flowers. So just like we need a little diversity in our diet to be healthy, so do honeybees. So that's another factor that threatens them specifically. And I would be surprised if that doesn't also apply to other bee species and such. But there has been research on honeybees specifically. And then of course, with coming climate change, I think that will change ecosystems in a way that will also be stressful for pollinators.
Thanks so much. So I remember learning a lot in your class about colony collapse disorder. Could you give us a little insight of what exactly that is? We have a slide up, but
yeah, sure. And actually, I just realized I forgot, and you had it on your slide, but another big driver of a decline in honeybees specifically are the disease and parasites.
Mm-hmm.
There's a big one for honeybees called the varroa mite. And so this is why it's really multiple factors that are stressing and causing the decline of pollinators. I'm speaking specifically about honeybees because that's what I know the best. But it's this sort of intersection of all of these different things that are causing them to be less healthy. But a big driver of decline, and in fact, the biggest driver of why we don't have wild honeybees in the US anymore is the varroa mite, which has wiped out a lot of honeybees. Professional beekeepers and amateur ones too have to be very careful about managing the varroa mite infestations in their hives. So that's a big one. And sorry, I forgot to mention, but yeah, we can go back to colony collapse now. So your question was, what is it?
Well, actually, I'm so glad you brought up varroa mites. I was about to ask you about that too. What is it that's causing these mites to have population booms? Like, or have they always been around, or is there something recently that's made it a lot worse?
That's a really good question. I don't know what's caught if they are having a population boom necessarily. It's a problem that was introduced, and then once it got hold, and they're quite successful at, they attach to bees and basically suck the lymph out of the baby bees, which is not good for them. But those varroa mites have spread. They're actually spread globally, and there's only a few places in the world, Australia, I believe, is one of them, that have managed to keep a varroa mite out. So varroa mite, I guess you could call it an invasive species, the way they spread. Whether their populations are increasing now, something's driving that, I can't say exactly what that is. I'm afraid I don't know. But they're just very successful at thriving, and over time, they're just able to spread. I think one thing also is just with colonies moving around, it's easier to spread varroa mites from one hive to another, especially if that hive is moving cross country. that could be one factor, although I don't have specific data on that.
Yeah, so speaking of that, could you explain a little bit how modern beekeeping works, where you talked about bees moving across country and stuff?
Sure. You're talking about commercial beekeeping?
Yeah.
Sure. So, we think about beekeepers as, keeping bees to maybe sell some honey if you're a commercial beekeeper. And once upon a time, I think that probably was true, and that, selling honey was the thing that made your money if you were a beekeeper. But now the big profit comes from pollinator services. So we know, as Jonah mentioned, that pollination is something bees do really well, and honeybees, they feed on so many different kinds of flowers. They're really great at pollinating. And so now beekeepers can actually ship their beehives around the country and set them in an orchard at the right time when the trees need pollination to be able to bear fruit. If you, for example, your pear tree doesn't get pollinated, you'll either have less fruit or no fruit, depending on what kind of tree. But a lot of crops depend on pollination to bear fruit. And so these commercial beekeepers will rent their bees and rent them as a service. That's where a lot of commercial beekeepers make most of their money now, is not so much from honey sales, but from pollination services. And it's really amazing if you look at the map and you track some of these beekeepers over the course of a year. They will go from, Maine to California for almonds, down to Florida for oranges, and then up to, all around the country, following the seasons of the crops and when they need pollination. So if you've ever seen these pictures of semis turned over on highways when they have beehives, it's not a pretty sight, but that's because so many bees get trucked around the country for pollination services.
Thanks so much. That's perfect. So yeah, moving back into colony collapse disorder, could you just tell us? I know we have a slide up, but think what that means and why it's such a big problem. Yeah.
Sure. This was a really strange phenomenon, and this actually happened more than a decade ago, more than a decade and a half ago, I think. But it was a strange thing where all of a sudden beekeepers were reporting that their bees were just disappearing. And this was really strange because normally, if you have some problem, like let's say varroa mite, or there's all sorts of other pathogens, there are signs of dead bees, and you can collect the dead bees and do some analysis and figure out, oh, it was this virus, or it was this disease, or this is what killed them. And usually you can figure it out. But in this case, the bees just disappeared, and they left the queen behind along with all the baby bees. And that's something bees don't normally do. So something was really strange. Something is really wrong here. And it was happening on a broad scale too. So I can't speak as much to what the phenomenon was like in other countries. I think there was a little bit in Europe, but in the US, beekeepers were reporting just tremendous losses in the numbers of their hives, especially over the winter. So typically you might lose some beehives over a winter, but in this case, they would lose a lot, and not always just over winter. They might have a healthy hive that suddenly all the bees are gone. And this is a huge problem because a lot of people make their living beekeeping. And so a loss of their bees is really a loss of their income. And what caused colony collapse disorder is complicated, and it's not clear. Despite, almost 2 decades or a decade and a half of research, there is not a clear, it was this virus, or it was this pesticide, or it was one thing. The best, or I think the consensus is that it was a combining of a lot of different factors And perhaps there was one factor that tipped these bees over the edge, but if you look at all of the threats that bees were under, which I described some of before, you know, honeybees, if they're feeding on, you know, poor diet with just one kind of pollen, that weakens them. Maybe they fight off some varroa mites and they survive, but they're weakened. And then you might have some pesticides that normally they can handle, but that also makes them sick. So it's just thinking about all the things that make them weaker collectively. Maybe there was a pathogen, or I don't think there was ever a smoking gun detected, but it fit with a broader pattern of pollinator decline. So it wasn't just honeybees in the backdrop, other pollinators like native bees and bumblebees were also declining. So it got a little fuzzy what was colony collapse disorder versus what was just bees, you know, becoming weak enough that they perhaps couldn't fly home. So it's been a little murky, but the bigger picture is that bees are not very healthy, and that probably pushed them to the declines that we saw.
Yeah, well, thanks so much again. I remember one of the things that we do a lot here at Clean Earth for Kids is advocate against pesticide use, especially me working with water. Keeping pesticides out of water supplies is super important to me. But we've been talking a lot about neonicotinoids. Neo, is that how you say it? I don't remember.
That's right. That's good.
Okay. But yeah, that's something we've talked about a lot. So could you talk a little bit about what those pesticides have done to bees potentially, or yeah, just how they have affected bees?
Sure. It's a growing body of scientific evidence that shows the impact of pesticides on honeybees. And it's tricky because it's not always a clear, oh, this pesticide, as soon as they touch it, they die. That would be very clear that it's bad for bees. But it's more kind of along the lines that I said before, where, you know, in small doses that bees are exposed to, you might think, well, it's not dead. It's, you know, it was exposed to a little pesticide and it's still alive, so maybe it's okay. But if you study it carefully, you start to see the cumulative effects, not just of cumulative exposure to pesticide, but also the interaction with these other threats that they're under. And there have been many studies that as we learn more and we do more studies, we find out more impacts. So for example, we know that there's been studies looking at neonicotinoids' effects on navigation. And so they dosed a bee with a neonicotinoid and one that didn't, and the one who had the exposure could not fly its way back. It basically jammed up its navigation system and its memory. So we think it has an impact on their memory, which they need to navigate home. You know, that's one example. There have also been increasing studies on neonicotinoids' effects on other organisms. Bumblebees, there have been studies on them showing detrimental effects on how they, I believe, their colony size and how they build. One for sure that's been recently shown is it's increasingly clear that it also has impacts on migrating birds. So they'll stop to feed on seeds that might have some neonicotinoids, and the birds that eat seeds that have traces of neonicotinoids, they, for some reason, delay their migration, which has then consequences for their survival, because migrating is about getting to a different place sooner to have better chances at breeding. And these delayed migrations have a consequence for those birds. There's also been a study of pesticides, neonicotinoids in water, and deer that have drank that water. They have fawns that are lower birth weight than fawns that are not from a mother that's been exposed to water with neonicotinoids in it. So I think over time, you know, I've been reading this here and there, the evidence is slowly accumulating, and I think now it's pretty clear. the body of evidence shows that neonicotinoids really do have a harmful effect on pollinators and other animals.
Yeah, that's super interesting, all those things you mentioned. It's nice to get little refreshers of things that we talked about. I don't remember anymore, but now moving into talking about what you've been doing at Georgetown with the Xerxes Society and Bee Campus, or Bee City. Can you talk about not only what you're doing in Georgetown, but also what's happening in the DC area?
Yeah.
The bees. Thanks.
Yeah, sure. So Georgetown is the first university in DC to gain Bee campus status, and we just got that, I think, last month. So we're excited about that. But as I mentioned, I teamed up with a couple other faculty, some students in the Hoya Hive group, and also the Georgetown Office of Sustainability. And we got together to put together this proposal. So Bee Campus is this program through the Xerxes Society. The Xerxes Society is a nonprofit organization that basically is trying to advocate for the conservation of invertebrates. Pollinators are a big focus. So one of their initiatives is this Bee City and Bee Campus project. And so the idea is they are encouraging campuses around the US as well as cities to make a plan and a pledge to basically do things to help pollinators. And I'll get to what those kinds of things are in a second. But the idea is you apply for status by showing that you have, actually, could you go back a slide? Is it auto switching? Oh, okay.
It's going. There you go.
It's just automatic. Okay. I was going to say there are a few things that you can do to gain this status. So kind of three prongs. So one is building more pollinator curriculum and education into what we teach at Georgetown. So that's a big reason at Jonah's class that I took that I taught about colony collapse disorder and the pollinator crisis. And some other faculty have developed things too. Dr. Hahn has a beekeeping class. So in this picture below the Bee Campus logo, you can see all the hives that he has put together for his beekeeping course, which is on campus. So Jonah, next time you get to go back, it's right up on Observatory Hill. And the other part, so there's the education piece. We also, a big part of this is a commitment to actually changing habitat on campus to be more pollinator friendly. So that was another major category we had to implement plans are. And so this is actually the very quick planting that some of my colleagues did during the COVID pandemic because they just wanted something in here. We actually had much more laid out plans for this, but it's great. We converted this garden space in front of one of our science buildings into a pollinator garden. And the plan, which hopefully in the future we'll have, is we'll also have signs to teach people what kinds of plants and what kind of pollinators visit this. So a really important thing to think about is the habitat and the what food sources that our pollinators need, as well as nesting sources. So we created this pollinator garden, and then the final piece is some plan for outreach beyond our campus. And so this is what I can talk about if you want to switch to the pollinator parade. So this was just a fun activity that I organized this summer with a lot of help from a great student in the Hoya Hive Club, Allie Smith. And then I teamed up with the DC Beekeepers Alliance, as well as the City of DC Department of Energy and Environment. And we coordinated and put together what we called the Pollinator Porch Parade. So this was meant as an outreach activity. And the idea was during National Pollinator Week, we picked 2 days where people would do something to celebrate and teach about pollinators at their house. So it could be a sidewalk chalk display, it could be artwork. It could be if you had a pollinator garden, just putting up a sign saying, you know, here are pollinators and here are some of the things you see in my garden. So just, you know, some way to celebrate and teach people about pollinators. And then we mapped it out. There's if you scroll to the bottom of the website, if you go to our website, I didn't put the URL there, sorry, but you can Google it. There is a map that registered participants, I would put a pin of whether it was a pollinator garden or an art display or a beehive. And the idea was when people are out for their walks, they can plan to take a route that they can go visit these different displays. So if you go to the next slide, is kind of fun. These are just some examples of some of the displays and gardens and things that were found around town. And then connected to this, we had a social media campaign with just some fun facts about pollinators and hopefully get, you know, people reminded of why it's so important to conserve these creatures, these wonderful pollinators. So that was a big outreach piece of our Bee Campus application. Yeah, I love this. My neighbor made these cartoons. I thought they were great. If you could go to the next slide. And I think that's might be my final slide. Or is there not a next? Okay, I had a slide that had just so the DC Department of Energy and Environment was a great partner, as was the DC Beekeeping DC DOEE. Basically, they are the ones who have supported DC being a bee city. So it's been really nice to have the city of DC and their government as a bee city partner with us to make us the first DC bee campus in putting together an event like this. So that's, you know, what the Bee Campus program is, and those are kind of three main areas that we've been working on, but you know, we'll have to keep doing things, and so we're not sure because we haven't had a chance to meet in person, but we will be planning other things, and there's aspirations to have observation hives on campus, you know, more high-tech like monitoring of a beehive so that people can actually see through through a monitor things like the temperature of the hive, the weight of the hive. These are just ideas we're playing with, but we're excited to just expand this program and invite more people to join us.
Thank you so much, Professor Way. Yeah, just all the great information that you shared. And also we're so grateful to see examples of great citizen science in progress, because that, you know, that's so much of what we do. We can use this as inspiration for our own. You know, we have lots of artists in our organization that could make similar campaigns on social media and such. Yeah, but we're just so grateful to have you. And for me, my own knowledge to be refreshed on all those things that I learned about. And
you're very welcome.
Yeah, and so with that, here, I need to get to the doc real quick, but we'd like to move on a little bit and talk with Jillian about two very important bills in Congress.
Yes, thank you so much, Jonah. And thank you so much, Dr. Way. That was so incredibly informational. I've never had a formal course on this, so it's very interesting to hear. I am going to talk about SEPA, or Saving America's Pollinators Act. And this was started by Congressman Earl Blumenauer from Oregon. Basically, this act, which was proposed in 2019, bans bee toxic pesticides. I know one that we've mentioned on several other panels, imidacloprid. It would ban the pesticides like that. It also requires a review of other potential bee toxic chemicals by an independent board deemed pollinator protectors. It would also require annual reports on the health and population status of pollinators. we have a petition that you can sign, and I'll be sure to put that in the chat so that everybody can reach out and save America's pollinators. And with that, I would like to introduce Leanna to talk about PACPA.
Thank you, Jillian. So PACPA is the Protect America's Children from Toxic Pesticides Act. It was introduced by Senator Tom Udall of New Mexico. This act is really important because it protects humans and bees from harmful pesticides. For one, it bans organophosphates and neonicotinoids. Both are neurotoxins that harm our brains and disorient bees, as mentioned earlier. It also bans paraquat, which is a chemical herbicide that is highly toxic and is used all over the world. Even one sip is lethal to humans. This bill also closes loopholes and suspends and reviews pesticides deemed unsafe by Canada and the European Union. It also prohibits the use of old pesticides that are banned and requires labels in both English and Spanish. So I will also put the link for the petition to support this act, and also just discussing this act from a social justice perspective and everything we've been talking about. We have to protect the over 2.4 million workers at risk of pesticide poisoning. Children as young as 12 years old are allowed to work in fields, and 28% of farm workers are women, and most farm workers are married with children. 70% of these farm workers are Latino and Hispanic, and farm workers receive poverty wages averaging under $20,000 a year. So it's not like they necessarily have the means to have adequate health care to deal with these problems as well. So farm workers are also expected to live only 49 years, which compared to the 79 for the general population is not a loss. So this is about 20 years less than someone who's not working in the fields with pesticides. Even more, these farm workers don't have the same laws to protect their well-beings as well as the rest of our workforce. They are not covered under the laws of OSHA or the U.S. Department of Labor's Occupational Health and Safety Administration. Unfortunately, the Trump administration is trying to take away or limit buffer zones, which create distance between pesticides application and people. This will put more people at risk from dangerous consequences of toxic pesticides. To just kind of clarify, a buffer zone or an exclusion zone is a distance to protect people. We need to stop using these toxic pesticides and protect their farm workers and their families, as well as our children, water, pollinators, and wildlife who are also living near buffer zones or are impacted by pesticides. People of color are also more likely to live in areas that have toxic pesticides and other pollution, or consume things that have been like things like strawberries or other produce you might buy in store that have been treated with pesticides and other herbicides. So we have to make sure that we reduce toxic pesticides, actually eliminate toxic pesticides, not only for our pollinators, for also people as well. So I'm going on from that. Jonah, you recently called into the California Department DPR to ask them to stop using neonicotinoids that are harmful for our bees. Can you please tell us about your experience of what it was like calling in to meeting to speak and why you felt like you must make this call?
Yeah, so I called in a couple weeks ago to a meeting of a Zoom meeting of the California Department of Pesticide Regulation, because it's clear from what we talked about tonight and also in previous panel discussions that we need to do everything we can to minimize the stress that we put on bees because of the fact that they're dying off and that they're such an important component of our ecosystems. And one way that we can minimize their stress is by getting rid of these pesticides, neonicotinoids, which are the most widely used pesticides on the planet. So, some pesticides have tried to, justify using neonicotinoids in smaller volumes, but even small volumes, as we talked about tonight, they can still mess with bees' navigation. Some studies have shown reproduction and their immune functions are also damaged even with those small volumes. So we know that a lack of pollinators can cause huge problems for our agriculture and our economy, and farmers desperately need pollinators for their well-being. So I'd like to talk a little bit to Catherine on Team 2, which works to protect public lands and wildlife. And Catherine, what are your concerns based on what we talked about tonight about bees?
Thanks, Jonah. Yes, I am concerned about our pollinators, butterflies, birds, and our wildlife, water, soil, and food. Since 90% of all flowering plants need pollinators, and 1 out of 3 bites of food is because of pollinators. Thank you to everyone who was working to stop toxic pesticides. There are many alternatives. We must protect pollinators. Sadly, the monarch butterfly in California coastal regions have dropped by 90% due to pesticides and herbicides like Roundup that destroy the milkweed and nectar flowers. We must take action. The EU, European Union, is moving forward with banning additional neonicotinoids and toxic pesticides. We can make a difference in protecting pollinators, our food, water, and children from future toxic pesticides. And Judith will share her artwork and honor a person working to protect monarch butterflies and other pollinators.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Catherine. Tonight, we honor Jay Koppenstein and thank him for his service on our board at cleanearthforkids.org. He works incredibly hard protecting pollinators, our air, water, and public lands. He works on all teams, but mainly works on team 1, 2, and 3. He is a retired teacher and has won Teacher of the Year. He also works on citizen science projects. Jay, could you please say a few words about your work on saving the monarch butterfly and pollinators, please?
Yes, Judith, thank you so much. Before we hear from Jay, I'd love to show again the contest, if we could. These are the hands. So we can hopefully get that done, and then we'll be hearing from Jay. So we're elevating Jay to a panelist. So again, thank you, Jay, for all of your important work on our board for cleanearthforkids.org. It makes me cry thinking about it. So guys, Jay's been around there for decades. I was lucky to see some of the beautiful trees that he planted with his students years and years and years ago in Carlsbad. And so anyone who knows Jay knows that he gives 100% to all that he does. I'm sorry. Gives 100% to all that he does. He tries so hard for all of us. He's such a great friend and a mentor, and just an amazing, amazing person. So not sure why this is coming up on the screen right now. So we're going to go back to that. So guys, when this is on YouTube, we'll make sure. So somebody else is sharing right now. So whoever is sharing, guys, so don't share your screen. Thank you. So John's going to share, and then we'll be able to hear from Jay. Is Jay on the call? Jay, are you on the call?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Oh, there you are. Hi. Would you like to say some things about monarchs and your work and why it is important to you?
Well, it's been a wonderful study over the last, few years specifically. Dr. Way mentioned, and Jonah mentioned that, we have a loss of 90% compared to what we had years ago. So it's each year, I think, habitat loss of milkweeds, just the impact of insecticides, the impact of change of seasons with climate change. All of this is impacting them as a pollinator. And it's a wonderful, iconic butterfly to study because it takes 4 generations to go from the World Heritage Site in Mexico clear up to Canada, and amazing. And then 1 super generation of monarchs to fly all the way back and spend the winter in Mexico. But I guess we're lucky also to have up and down our California coast, San Luis Obispo and other places that the monarchs stay all year round. I think maybe it's because we're providing a special milkweed, a tropical milkweed that attracts them to stay longer than they normally do. We need to plant probably more native milkweed. So there's a lot of effort being made out there on both coastlines, and there's even monarch pledges by mayors, and cities are pledging for monarchs. So last summer and this summer I've been raising monarchs in the front yard, and neighbors drop by and are always impressed by, you know, the larva that's there. And we release the monarchs in front of kids that drop by, and we take them down to the library when it was open before COVID and shared them. So what a wonderful experience that it is to study and know more about this pollinator, the monarchs. Thank you. This is a wonderful, it looks like this is Judith's work. Is this Judith's work that's put this all together, or did everybody combine something?
Yes, so Judith created this for you, and it comes from our contest, These Are the Hands. So we select, and others can as well when they enter our contest, someone who has made a profound difference in the lives of others. That's why I felt like crying, because I just feel so proud to serve on this board with you, and it means so much. So I'll try to pull it together. So Jay, can you tell us what inspires you to do all the work you do, 7 days a week, helping Clean Earth for Kids, and all of the important things that you've done for decades? So what is your motivation?
Well, my motivation is being associated with, you know, people like yourself on the board that's directing this program with children, and having taught for nearly 50 years and the last 8 to 10 years online. It's just inspirational to see my students and see other teachers, other people in the community, just wanting to get out there and protect and preserve and provide for nature. I think society has fallen into a duality that nature is not a part of us, and we need to bring it together that we are nature and we need to protect nature. And what a wonderful series you and the students have provided on knowing more about pesticides. You know, tonight I learned how to pronounce, I think, the neonicotinoids.
Well, the jury is still out, right? So in different parts of the country, it's said a little differently, and that's
tough
why
one to pronounce.
we were kind of laughing. Yes, so yeah, so when we were at Cal DPR, Department of Pesticide Regulation, you know, it's said a little bit differently than it is on the East Coast. So yeah, we've all had a lot of good laughs about that because of, yeah. So anyway, and Jay, we're super excited about all of the citizen science projects that you're working on and that we'll be able to have students share. So thank you so much for being here. And we'd also like to thank Dr. Wei for being here. This is just such an excellent presentation, and we're so excited about your citizen science project and all that you're doing, and we're so excited to work together. This is definitely not the last that we will see of you, because we want to learn so many things. We want to learn so many things about how you put all those things together. You know, it's so fabulous, the pollinator parade and all of the great stuff that you're doing. So thank you again so much for all of that. So Dr. Wei, we'd love to hear some closing words from you, something that you would like us to work on or do, or some thoughts that you would like us to leave tonight with.
Oh, that's a good question. I guess maybe a good place to start is thinking about what each person can do to help with pollinators. And I think you laid out a lot of good ideas, but I guess one thought is that it's really important to get out there and learn and observe the pollinators, because, you know, going with the Protect What You Love campaign that you have, you know, we're not going to protect things that we don't know much about. And so you're doing what I guess I want to part with, but I think it's important to everyone who's listening to this webinar or whatever we're calling it, that is the right step, is to first, you know, learn about these pollinators and appreciate them for, you know, they are beautiful and they play such an important role in our ecosystems and in our lives. So thank you for everything you do. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you. Judith, I want to put you on the spot for a second. So Judith, this is your work again. So you created this. It says be pesticide free. Please plant flowers, right? Because bees obviously need flowers and things that they can get their nectar from. So Judith, what inspires you to be an artist and do all of the work that you do?
I think this was, I answered this last time. I don't know, but but yeah, the youth board members, of course, and also like nonprofit organizations. What else? Like hearing the information, the new information I hear every panel discussion encouraged me like to try harder on my work and like put more effort in it to like speak my voice. I don't know. I just want to show how I truly feel in my art. So I want to try really hard to express that, I guess.
Thank you again so much for all of your great art, and thank you to everyone who contributes amazing things all the time and for being here. Leanna, would you like to remind people things that they can do to get in touch with us?
Yes, of course, Suzanne. So just remember, you guys can always go to cleanforkids.org to learn more about the petitions we have, all of our panel discussion links, and just about each team individually. We have everything set up for that. We also have a YouTube channel that has all of these panel discussions and more videos, specifically more videos about the 100 rollbacks that are going under the Trump administration right now. We will have those uploaded soon. And we also have social media accounts such as our Twitter and our Instagram and Facebook, which are all cleanforkids.org. So if you guys feel free to go check those out. Just want to say thank you again, Dr. Ray and Jay, for all that you do, and all the interns and fellow youth board members for everything they do. And of course, Suzanne, and just thank everyone for watching tonight. And I hope that everyone stays safe and everyone stays healthy. And just a reminder to go to the chat and click on those petitions that we did send out. There's a really important way to utilize your voice during these times. If we can't do it in person, might as well use the power of the internet. So just want to say that and good night, everyone.